All right, you guys can grab a seat.
It was still called Not a Fan, but it was a different.
So we're kicking off a new series today called Not a Fan. We're going to dig into that, what that's all about. But really quick, I want to ask you this question. How many of you guys know what a DTR is? Raise your hands if you know what DTR is. Yep. A few of you do. I want to teach you. DTR is a term that means define the relationship. Now, if you know what that means, how many of you guys have had a DTR conversation in your life before? You know, you're hanging out with someone, maybe starting to date them, figuring it out, and then comes that heavy conversation called the DTR where it's like, all right, where are we going with this? Are we just hanging out? Is this serious? What's the plan? Do you love me? Whatever that may be. There comes a point where you have to really look at what's the plan in this relationship. Is it something that's going to be serious? Or are you just simply hanging out or something along those lines? Me personally, I hated and avoided the DTR relationship or conversation with everything I possibly had. As soon as I sensed it would coming, that would be the end of hanging out. There was one time I got tricked into the DTR conversation. There was a girl in high school. We were hanging out, getting to know each other. It was very simple and casual. And she goes, hey, let's go hang out at Panera Bread and just get some food. I'm like, that sounds great. I'll pay for myself. You pay for yourself. This is good. She goes, and she pays for me. And right away I'm like, this is not just a simple hanging out time. She's paying for my soup and my French baguette. Like, what's going on right now? And sure enough, we start hanging out and she goes, all right, let's have the DTR conversation. And I just sit there eating my brothy cheddar soup in silence. I'm like, I cannot believe I got tricked into the DTR conversation. And truth be told, that was the end of that hanging out with that person because I just tried to avoid that conversation at all costs. It wasn't where I wanted to be in life. It wasn't about a serious relationship. The DTR talk is something that's needed, though, for a relationship, for it to become something more and actually become something that's actually transforming. Like having a deep relationship with somebody, having a marriage or anything like that. Those are important, transforming relationships. And to get to that level, you have to have that DTR conversation. All of us have had that talk in our lives. But what's worse, though, when it comes to DTR, is when somebody else starts bothering you about it. You know, that crazy aunt that won't leave you alone, or that best friend, like, so, what's going on with so-and-so? And you're just not ready to have that conversation. They start pestering you about it. And so you have to deal with them, and we hate those people, right? And so you're probably going to hate me right now. Because the tension I want to bring up is a DTR conversation for all of us. And the DTR conversation is, what's up with our relationship with Jesus? And this isn't like a Jesus juke. And what a Jesus juke is, if you don't know that, is when someone's having just a normal conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden out of like left field, they bring in Jesus to the conversation. Like you're at the gym, and you're lifting weights, and like you say to the guy you're lifting weights with, you're like, oh, that set was heavy. And the guy's like, yeah, you know what was heavy? Jesus carried the cross for your sins. Like somebody who does that, you don't like that. That's messed up and weird. Like, don't be that Jesus juking person. That's not cool. But I'm not Jesus juking here. Because here's what I'm getting at. The idea of having a DTR about your faith is important. This is a serious thing that every person has to deal with. And this is why we're kicking off the brand new year with this series called Not a Fan. And basically what we're getting at is throughout this series, I want all of us to kind of have a DTR conversation with ourselves, maybe some other people, about what's our faith look like? What's our relationship with Jesus look like? Is it serious, or are we just kind of, hanging out with Jesus type of a thing? For some of you, maybe you're just starting to explore who Jesus is. You're starting to explore faith. You're here for the first time, or maybe just exploring after a while. Like, okay, I don't know what to do with this faith thing, this Jesus thing, this God thing. If that's you, it's kind of almost like you're on a first date with faith. Have a seat, relax, just sit back and listen. The pressure's not on you today. I'm glad you're here to explore this thing. But for others of us, maybe this is something you're excited about. This idea of like, maybe you've been thinking for a long time, I need to get serious about my faith. I want to really dig into this and see what this faith thing's all about, this Jesus guy is all about, what this whole thing is leading to. And maybe you're excited about having this conversation, and you're ready to take that step of commitment to following Jesus. Some of you, not so much. You don't want to get real about your relationship with Jesus, and maybe you've noticed over the past week, month, years, whatever it may be, your faith has kind of gotten casual, kind of taken for granted. And I know I've been guilty of that in my own life, where it's just kind of be something that's happened in it happens naturally. You go to church on Sunday, but it doesn't become real. It's just something you do to check the box off the list or whatever that may be. Maybe that's where you're at. But this is something we all need to talk about, because this is what Jesus said himself in Luke 9:23. Then he said to all of them, he's talking to a bunch of people, Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me. And Jesus says that people need to get over themselves and follow him, and to really be his disciple, to be a follower. And so the question I want to ask is, are you a fan or a follower of Jesus? And this is how a fan is described. A fan is someone who's an enthusiastic admirer. Often if you would say someone who's involved with church or goes to church, like, are you a fan or follower of Jesus? People go, I'm a follower of Jesus. This is what I do. But let's not be so quick to answer that question. So I think a lot of us, what we can do is we can follow in this category of being a fan of Jesus, this enthusiastic admirer of Jesus. Because a lot of us are fans of things. We, especially here in Pittsburgh, we love our sports teams. We're fans of sports. We cheer, we watch games, we own jerseys, we spend money, we're emotionally invested in these things. Or maybe if you're not a sports person, it could be music or movies or whatever that hobby may be. We are all fans of something. We know what it's like to be a fan of something. It just kind of comes natural to us. And the risk we run in the church is that often the church is filled with fans of Jesus rather than followers of Jesus. And we admire Jesus, we like Jesus, we think Jesus is great, but we don't actually take the step to be a committed follower of Jesus. And there's a big difference, which is why we're doing this series. And so the tension I want to raise is this. Are you a fan or follower of Jesus? You see, when Jesus came to this earth and started his ministry and started teaching, he did not come to create a bunch of fans. He came to create followers, and this was constant in his message as he spoke to people. In Matthew 4:19, he says this, come follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. As he's talking to people who are fishing for a fish, he says, you follow me, I'm going to teach you how to transform people's lives. Matthew 8:22, but Jesus told him, follow me and let the dead bury the dead. He was talking to a guy that wanted to follow Jesus, was interested in Jesus, liked what Jesus had to say, but when Jesus said, hey, commit your life to follow me, the guy was like, I can't right now, my dad's old, I gotta take care of him, and he's like, you know what, if you can't follow me right now, you gotta go let the dead bury their own dead. This is something you've got to commit your life to. It sounds harsh, but Jesus was pretty blunt a lot of times in his teachings. Matthew 9:9, he says, as Jesus went out from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. And follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. And Matthew left his job, left his old life to follow Jesus. John 12:26, he says, whoever serves me must follow me. Where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. He says, if you want to serve me, be a part of me, you have to follow me. This is a constant message in Jesus' life. And Jesus was not about making fans who admired him, but wanted followers who were committed to him, and that's what he was all about. And so the question we're raising this new year is, are you a fan or follower? Some questions that kind of help answer that is what we're going to wrestle with today. Kind of ask each other and ask ourselves these questions. And so for some of us say, this is just the start. We're going to ask these questions, kind of look at it and go, okay, this is the start for me. It's a new year. I'm exploring this. This is a good place to start. For others, maybe today flips the switch for you. You've wrestled with faith for a long time and you've kind of wondered what it was all about. Today it's like, you know what, maybe this is what it takes for me to take this step of committing to following Jesus. And for others, it's just part of your process. This is something for me, as I've been a follower of Jesus since I was a kid, pretty much. I've been involved with ministry for over 10 years full time, and before that as a volunteer for many years. And I followed Jesus a big part of my life. And today's series, and I want to be very clear about this, is just as important for someone like me who's the pastor of this church as it is for anybody else. And it's important for all of us to go through this and have that DTR kind of conversation about our faith. So we should answer these questions that we're going to wrestle with today honestly, authentically to ourselves, with our spouse, whoever that may be. And the first question I want to raise is this, is why are you here? And this isn't a question like, why do you exist? We're not getting all existential with it right now, anything like that. What I'm saying is, why are you here at church? For some of you, you come here every single week or consistently. Others of you, you're here because you've made it work. It's the new year, things like that. Others of you are like, you get to church when you can fit within the chaos of life because schedules are hectic, kids are hectic, life is busy. It's like, okay, we can finally make it. Others of you are here because your spouse or a friend drug you here, and it's like you're here because you're supporting them, and that's good too. Either way, you're here, so why? If you were to say, I'm here because of what is your because? What is your reasoning for being here? And we all need to answer that, even me. It's my job to be here. Obviously, I shouldn't be here, but I need to ask myself, why are we doing this thing called One Church? Why are we meeting every single week? Oftentimes in Jesus' ministry, what he would do is he would draw a line in the sand to cause people to answer this question. He actually worked really hard to get rid of the fans and the popularity of his ministry. He actually became really popular with his teachings, with his miracles, with his radical and rebellious way. He kind of lived amongst the religious leaders of the day. People were attracted to Jesus. They loved Jesus and what he was doing. Thousands and thousands came to him But Jesus kind of knew what their hearts were all about. They wanted something from him rather than them wanting to follow him. There was a big difference there. Jesus recognized that. Often people would come for healings and for food and all these things, and Jesus would heal and Jesus would give food and he'd perform these miracles. But he really wanted to know what their hearts were at. Why were they there? Were they there for the miracles and food, or were they there for something more? So he taught some really hard things that kind of help separate the fans from the followers. Like in John 6, he teaches a situation where he's saying, listen, if you want any part of me, if you want to be my follower, you want to be part of God's kingdom, you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And people are sitting there like, what? Like, this is awkward and weird. Like, this is the most weird thing this Messiah that we've been waiting for could possibly say, eat my flesh, drink my blood. What is he referring to? And what Jesus was referring to is he was laying the foundation for communion. And if you've been to church before, you've been a part of that, you know the foundation of we remember Jesus' sacrifice through the bread, through the juice or wine, whatever church background you're from, as a remembrance of this is what Jesus came to do, to lay down his life for us. And Jesus says, you've got to eat my flesh, drink my blood, but he said you have to be part of the communion of what I came to do. But people heard this flesh and blood thing, and it's like, this is weird. This is a very intense way to say it. But Jesus said this on purpose to say, okay, who's going to trust me on this? Who's going to follow me into this? And people started grumbling about it. And John 6, verse 66 says this, from this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. See, Jesus wasn't about creating fans. He created a ruckus with his ministry. He created tons of fans. Thousands of people came to listen to him teach and preach and do miracles and things like that. And he did those things. But what Jesus came to do was to create followers, because he knew followers would be transformed individuals who would transform the lives and the communities around him. And so I ask the same question for all of us. Why are we here? Why are we a part of this thing? Why are we exploring this faith thing? Whether it's here through one church or any other church you've been a part of. Are you here for the coffee and donuts or the great children's ministry, for friends, whatever that may be, so you can sit in a school auditorium with these amazing, comfortable seats that you're sitting in right now? Obviously, I'm being really sarcastic because some of these seats need replaced. They're pretty rough. But we have these things, and all that's fine for the time being. And as a pastor of this church, I will never apologize for having a great children's ministry. In fact, when I talk to other pastors, that's the first thing I brag about. Our children's ministry is great. Kids love it. Our volunteers are amazing. I've always wanted one church to be a place where kids can come and be here and feel excited about coming to church. Because there were times growing up as a kid, I wasn't excited about going to church. So I wanted this to be a place for that. So I'll never apologize for that. I'll never apologize for this being a place that we have coffee and donuts and refreshments. Because I want this to feel like a relaxed atmosphere. You don't have to feel uptight and stuffy about the idea of church. But I've always wanted it to be more than that. I want those things to help set the environment, but this has always been about following Jesus, because there comes a time where we have to define the relationship. Where am I with Jesus? Why am I here? And Jesus drew that line, and we need to do that as well. Because the truth is, if we are a part of this faith, a part of this church out of convenience, comfort, or because you have to, or because you like it, but it's never going to be something you fully commit to, then all we're simply doing in that situation is being a fan of Jesus. We admire him, we like him, but it doesn't go beyond that. And so what is your because? And Jesus answered that question for us for himself. Why would he come to this earth, God in the flesh, to come and lay down his life for us? And his DTR for mankind was for Jesus. He wants a deeper relationship with mankind, with you and with me and everybody. This is what Jesus came to do, to rescue and redeem everybody. And so when we ask ourselves the question, we have to ask, why are we here? What's the whole purpose of this church thing? But it doesn't mean we have it all figured out, have all the answers, because we're never going to. We have to ask, why are we doing this thing? The second question I want us to ask as we kick off this new year in this series is, are you all in? That's a very heavy question. Are you all in? Because to be a follower of Jesus, it means that you are completely committed, that you'll do whatever it takes to follow Jesus. But we don't do well with the idea of complete commitment in our culture, right? Like, we like to keep things at arm's length. We like to be slower on things. So you look at, I know lots of people who are in their 20s now, they're single, they're figuring out that dating life right now. Everything's kind of arm's length because people are afraid of this idea of committing and jumping into something. We do that with jobs and clubs and things we're involved with the community. We like to do things at a safe distance, and we especially do that with faith. And as a piece of me, I fully understand why. It's scary, it's weird, it's like, what are we getting ourselves into? And so we like the idea of it, we're fans of it, we kind of keep our arm's length with them. But we kind of do this with faith too. And something we like to do, especially with faith, is we like to customize it. When McDonald's and Burger King kind of blew up and became these things in our culture. McDonald's was first. Like, it came with these milkshakes, these burgers. They were quick, and people would get them quick and cheap and fast. But Burger King came, and they actually made a dent in McDonald's profits early on, because what Burger King came with was this idea of have it your way. I'm sure you've all heard that tagline with Burger King, but what Burger King was all about was that, listen, you're not going to get something that is already pre-made for you. You can pick how you want your food. If you want lettuce or onions or pickles or whatever on your burger, we'll do that for you. You can have it your way. Now, McDonald's has just blown Burger King out of the water now, obviously, culturally and profit-wise. But what we saw is with that Burger King movement, we saw that with our cultural movement. A big thing that we're all about today is have it your way. That's good. It's legit. Like, I want that to take place. I don't want, like, someone to tell me what I have to eat when I go to a restaurant, right? But we do that with our faith as well. We like to pick and choose what our faith and our Christianity will look like. Like, for instance, we'll take Jesus as Savior and we'll take His forgiveness, but don't ask me, Jesus, to forgive that person who hurt me. I'm going to hold on to that hurt. I'm going to hold on to that pain. I'm going to hold on to that bitterness and resentment because, you know, that person hurt me and I don't want to give it up. And Jesus, I know you tell me to forgive over and over and over, and I love you, and I like what you're doing with this whole thing. I like what you do for my life, but don't ask me to do that. Or I like Jesus, but don't tell me to do what to do with my money, because that's my money. I work really hard for that money, Jesus, and so I'll like you, I'll trust you in certain areas, but the money thing, that's over here. I got that under control. Or Jesus, I like you, but don't tell me what to do, what to think about my desires, my sin, my greed, my pride. This is just part of who I am. I can't change that. And so often what we like to do is when it comes to the faith, we kind of like to customize it. We want to have it our way and do whatever we want with it. And the problem is when we do that, we simply are just fans of Jesus. And this is something we do with our faith way too often. In this book, Not a Fan by Kyle Edelman. In fact, if you didn't get one of these books at our Christmas service, there's still some out there at the information tables. Take one per family to a free gift for you guys. I want you guys to be reading through this book. It's fantastic. And Kyle Edelman's a great pastor. And this book is just so powerful. But he tells a story in this book early on about a church member who emails the church and says, hey, I'm leaving the church. And the reason why they're leaving the church is they didn't like Pastor Kyle's sermon. And I read that line, and I'm like, oh man, I feel you there, man. Like, I've been told your sermons aren't good. That's fine. That's not a big deal. But Kyle tells the story of how that bothered him a little bit. And so what he did is he got that member's number, and he blocks his number so they couldn't see that it was his number calling, which is really a little sketchy, but that's what he does. And so he calls this person, and they say hello, and it's like, hey, this is Pastor Kyle. And right away, they're like, oh no, what's going on right now? And Kyle's like, hey, I heard you're leaving the church, that's fine, but you just said the reason was you didn't like my sermons, and I want to hear why. Like, I want to become a better teacher, a better preacher. Can you help me understand why you don't like them so I can become better? And the person, he said, kind of stumbles around their words, but eventually what they get down to is this. They said that whenever I listen to one of your messages, it feels like you're trying to interfere with my life. And for Kyle, when he heard that, he kind of knew he was in the right direction. Because if we're, as pastors in our faith in Christianity and following Jesus, if we are teaching in ways that are challenging ourselves and everybody else, that following Jesus should interfere with our lives, then we're teaching the right thing. And for him, it was a reminder that, yes, his teaching should be like that. If following Jesus doesn't require you to change your life, then you're not really following Jesus. And don't miss that. Because a lot of times we like the idea of Jesus, but we don't want it to interfere with our lives. But we can't. If you read Jesus' account in the Gospels and what he teaches, what he calls his followers to do, it's going to screw things up. And it may seem scary at first, maybe uncomfortable and inconvenient at first, but we always see there is life on the other side of that. There's fulfillment on the other side of that. There's no bartering or picking and choosing what it looks like. We have to follow Jesus, not customize our faith. Because when it comes to believing in Jesus, it's not a mind thing, it's an action thing. But our belief means action and are what the cost. There's a guy by the name of Nicodemus in the Bible. And he was a Pharisee, which was like the highest of religious leaders in Jesus' day. They were wealthy, they had status, they knew their scripture, they had stuff memorized. And Nicodemus was this guy who was intrigued by Jesus. And we see Nicodemus 3 times throughout the gospel accounts of the story of Jesus. We see him 3 times. The first time we see Nicodemus is he's coming to Nicodemus in John 3 in the middle of the night. He wants to talk to Jesus more. He's kind of a fan of Jesus and what he's teaching, that he knows he's from God because of what Jesus is teaching. teaching and how he's teaching, but he's so scared and nervous of what his fellow Pharisees would think about him hanging out with Jesus that he goes in the middle of the night to seek Jesus out. And they have this conversation. That's actually where the famous verse, John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That was Jesus talking to Nicodemus one-on-one in the middle of the night, because Nicodemus is a fan of Jesus at that point, but he's a little nervous about being caught by his buddies hanging out with Jesus. So a little nervous there. Then we see, something happen later on in Jesus' ministry, in Nicodemus' life. People are upset about Jesus. In fact, the Pharisees and all the religious leaders get together and they're just grumbling. They're angry about Jesus. They're looking for ways to put him in prison or even kill him at this point. They eventually do that. And as they're talking about this, Nicodemus stands up and he says, brothers, doesn't our law say that this man should have a fair hearing about what's happening in his ministry? And so now Nicodemus goes from fan sneaking in the middle of the night to see Jesus to standing up in front of his fellow religious leaders and still kind of using the backing of their Jewish law. But he says, guys, he's not necessarily doing anything wrong. We have to give him his right to what he's saying. Because if he's from God, then God's going to do his thing. If he's not from God, then it'll just fall apart anyway. And so he says this, and now he's getting more public with his faith in Jesus. And then we see Jesus one more time. We see Nicodemus one more time, not Jesus. We see Nicodemus one more time. We see Nicodemus at the death of Jesus. We actually see him as Jesus is killed on the cross, he's crucified. As they're taking him off the cross, this guy Nicodemus comes with 75 pounds of myrrh and other spices, and this is used for traditional Jewish embalmment burial. But now Nicodemus is the one burying Jesus. So he goes from sneaking to see Jesus in the middle of the night to standing up to his religious brothers by saying, listen, he needs to have his fair hearing, to being so unashamed of his faith in Jesus that he's the one burying him. Jesus' apostles had scattered at that point out of fear, but Nicodemus is there. He's not scared anymore, doesn't care anymore. He is a full-fledged follower of Jesus, and he's the one burying him. What we see here is we see life change take place in Nicodemus. We see someone going from fan of Jesus to fully committed follower of Jesus, and this is a big deal because it was inconvenient, it was dangerous for Nicodemus, it cost something because 75 pounds of myrrh and spices cost a ton in that culture. But this is what it looks like to follow Jesus. It's inconvenient, it costs something, it maybe costs everything sometimes for people. But this is the difference between being a fan and a follower. And so, are you all in? This is a question we have to continually ask ourselves. And the third question I want to bring up is, have you made it your own? And this is a big one in our culture. This is one I can really resonate with. Often faith in church is something in our lives because our parents or grandparents introduced us to it, right? Like we grew up going to church with our parents or our grandparents. We went to Christmas and Easter services with our parents or grandparents. This is kind of how we got introduced to faith. This is part of our culture, our tradition. This is kind of what we grew up with. And oftentimes what we can do with that is we then do church and faith to appease something or someone. Because we're taught it's something you're supposed to do, you have to do, and so you go to it because it kind of checks that box. It makes mom, dad, or grandparents feel better, whatever that may be. And this is easily something we can do to become a fan and not a follower. This is something we do way too easy with our faith. Is we make it about someone else. We do it because we've been taught traditionally we have to do it. In our culture we have to do it. It makes other people happy if we do it. But we don't realize that we have to make it our own. It's really fun watching my oldest son Noah, who's 7 this football season, because this year, for the first time, he is all about football. He loves it. We have to tell him, I'm not kidding, 100 times a day to stop turning our living room into a football field. Like, if you come over to my house, you've seen this. Like, our couch is the end zone where he dives into it all the time. But Noah's been all about football this year, and I'm doing the proper parenting thing. He loves the Steelers. He likes Penn State. Sorry, Pitt fans. That's how we do it at our house. But he's all about that stuff. But this year, Noah is all about this dude named Joe Burrow. And if you guys pay attention to college football, this Joe Burrow has been a ton of fun to watch. He's a guy from Ohio who transferred away from Ohio State. Thank God, no one likes them. If you do, I'm sorry. But he transferred to LSU, kind of a one last shot because he couldn't get the starting job at Ohio State. And he played okay last year, and this year he took the college football world by storm. Wins the Heisman, dominates. They're in the national championship a week from tomorrow. And Noah has been all about Joe Burrow. Like, when can we watch Joe Burrow? Can I watch Joe Burrow highlights? I'll wake up in the morning and Noah's already in the living room with LSU and Joe Burrow highlights on the TV. He's watching and he just loves it. He's freaking out about it. And he goes, hey, when he gets to the NFL, can I get a Joe Burrow jersey? I break some news to him. I'm like, dude, you know who he's probably going to go to? The Cincinnati Bengals. Like the factory of sadness. Like, this is who he's going to play for. And he looked at me like, oh, man. Like, really? And I'm like, yes, what are you going to do about that? He's like, I'm still rooting for Joe Burrow. I think he's awesome. He's fun and all that kind of stuff. He's like, I want a Joe Burrow jersey, and I'm going to root for Joe Burrow every week except when he plays the Steelers. Now, that's a good parenting moment for him. All right, he's okay right now. But what Noah doesn't realize is, I don't care who he roots for. If Noah's become the biggest Joe Burrow fan, the biggest Cincinnati Bengals fan, like, that's up to him. If that's what he wants to do with it, he can just be a fan. I don't care who he's a fan of. But oftentimes, Noah's nervous because he didn't want it to be to think that I wasn't going to, that he wasn't going to be a Steeler fan anymore because he likes Joe Burrow. But what he doesn't realize is he can. He can cheer for whoever he wants. But if any of you tell him that, we're going to have words. Like, if he comes to me and he's like, I'm going to be a Patriots fan now. Like, I'm blaming one of you. Some of you told me. But he could be a fan of whoever he wants. He can. He can make it his own. And this is just something insignificant like sports that he's cheering for. But when it comes to faith, this is something much more. As Noah grows up, I want him to make things his own. And one of the most important things I want him to make his own of is his faith. I don't want Noah growing up, pursuing his relationship with Jesus, going to church because his dad's a pastor. Like, trust me, he has enough baggage put on him because I'm a pastor. I want Noah to make this thing his own. The truth is, you and I, we have to do the same exact thing. Our faith has to be our own. Sometimes we come to appease someone else when it comes to our faith and we stay comfortable about it. And we do this church thing because it makes your spouse or parents or whoever happy because this is what you're supposed to do. What we do is we just stay in comfort there. We don't wrestle with what this faith's all about. We go through with the flow, through the motions. But one of the most dangerous things we can do to our faith is make it about someone else and not make it our own. We want it to be our own. Jesus says this actually in Luke 14:26. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And Jesus was harsh. Like, we love Jesus. His teachings are great, but sometimes he's really harsh. And this is what he's saying here. He's not really saying you have to hate your mom and dad or your spouse or anything like that. He's saying your faith, you follow me, has nothing to do with your parents, your spouse, even your own dreams or desires. It's simply about following me, he says. Jesus doesn't want a relationship with you and your parents and your spouse. He wants a relationship with you and him. It starts there. And yeah, that'll overflow into our marriages, into our families, into our communities, into our workplaces, all that. But the main relationship Jesus is caring about is the one between you and him. So is your faith your own, or is it something or someone else's that you just kind of piggyback off of? These questions are something I want us to all wrestle with. Why are we here? Are we all in? And have you made it your own? These are the questions. So as we kick off this series, I want you to answer these questions honestly. And there's no right or wrong answer. What I want us all to be is just, this is where I'm at. If you're like, you know what, I'm not really sure what I'm at with this faith thing. I don't even know if it's real. That's fine. That's where you're at. For some of you, it's like, you know what, I've been wrestling with this a long time, but I've never made that commitment. That's where I'm at. Great. Wherever you're at, that's the right answer. But I want us to be honest with where we're at. And what we're getting at today is just simply asking the question, are we a fan or follower? Because as soon as we can define that, the better we can take steps forward. Because a fan admires, likes, and cheers on, and it all seems well and good, but Jesus doesn't ask for fans, he asks for followers. So the follower is committed completely. They give themselves up for the sake of Jesus, and it costs, it's inconvenient, and it means our lives are Jesus's, and every aspect of our lives should look to follow Jesus in that. Matthew 16:25, Jesus says this, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Jesus says when you give up your life to follow me, that's where you find true life, true fulfillment, true purpose. And this is where that's found by following Jesus. This is why we started One Church. And so as we were closing up our time here at the school, we have to look at why we're doing this. When we started One Church almost 2 years ago, we started with this mission. And we've said it before, and I'll keep saying it again, and hopefully you keep remembering it, but this is our mission as a church. This is why we exist. To work as one to help people follow Jesus. This is why we're here. Because the truth is, we didn't, Danielle and I and the kids, we didn't move from Wisconsin back here to Western Pennsylvania to help create fans of Jesus. We didn't. I don't care if people like Jesus. It sounds really harsh for a pastor to say, but I'm honest, because most people like Jesus. Most people I talk to, they may not even believe in God. They like the idea of Jesus and what he teaches and what he's all about. I don't care about that because lots of people do that. I care if people follow Jesus or not. I care if we're followers of Jesus, and I care if you follow Jesus. This is why we started this. We started this for you. And oftentimes we can think of churches as something that wants something from you. And that's always a nervousness with church. Like, oh, the church just wants something from you. They want money or this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to be straight up honest with you. Yeah, a good church should want something from you. I do. And one church does. And I want you and me and our families to follow Jesus. That's what I want more than anything else. This is why we started this. Not just to be a fan of Jesus, but to be a follower of Jesus. Because what we have there, that's where we find life. In fact, Jesus can do more with a few followers over thousands of fans. At the peak of Jesus' ministry, he had thousands of people hanging out with him. In fact, we read multiple times that Jesus did this miracle of creating more food so he can feed over 5,000 people food one day. There were 5,000 people hanging out with him and listening to him teach. But then after he is crucified, he dies and resurrects, after that there was 120 left around there. He went from thousands of fans to about 120 followers. Jesus was okay with that. Because he knew a follower was someone who was committed, someone who was transformed, someone who was going to do whatever it took to follow him. And Jesus asked for their lives to be committed. He asked for the resources to be given away. He challenged the status quo and he even laid down his life. And that 120 followers changed the world. Because after he died, he resurrected, he gave the commission to go make more followers of him throughout the entire world. And that's what that 120 people did. It's weird to think about it. We exist as a church today because thousands of years ago, 120 followers actually followed Jesus and what he asked them to do. This is crazy, but this is what he did. And so this is what we're challenging. If 120 can change the world, what can 50 to 60 do? That's what we average here on a Sunday morning at one church between adults and kids. What can 60 people, followers of Jesus, do? Actually, we can change some communities, maybe change our households, change some workplaces, make this a better place for people to live, to know and experience God's love and forgiveness for everybody and his grace. Or for us to live that out as individuals and as a church, we have to answer the question. This is the one thing. So if you're new, here's what the one thing is. If you forget everything else I said today, which is super likely, which is fine, I want you to remember this one thing. And today's one thing is a question. It's the same question I've been saying about this whole message. Am I a fan or follower of Jesus? I believe if you go throughout this next week, every morning or every day at lunch, whatever that may be, and just ask yourself, okay, am I a fan or a follower of Jesus? And it's going to get us into a spot to really wrestle with this and answer these questions of why am I here? Why am I exploring faith? Am I all in? Whatever that may be, it's going to get us in that spot to really explore this thing. Because as we continue in this series, I'm going to ask all of us to do a few things. One, I'm going to encourage us all to commit to this series. And maybe this is your first time back in church, or maybe you haven't been here in a while, whatever it may be. I'm asking, okay, throughout this 5-week series, be part of it. Be here next week, not here at the school. We talked about that. 202 Liberty Street, new building in Bridgeville. Be there next week, 9 a.m. But be there. Be a part of this thing to explore it together. And really just have that DTR conversation with yourself and your family, and whatever that may be, is what is Jesus to us? What are we doing here? I'm going to encourage you, if you have some friends or neighbors or whoever that may be, maybe they need to explore this too with you, invite them to come with you. Invite them to say, hey, there's this church, you can come, they got kids ministry, they got donuts and coffee, but most importantly, they're going to just kind of challenge everyone to really figure out what this faith thing is all about. At the end of the day, this series is not about being a fan of Jesus. I'm not trying to create more fans, trying to create followers. That's what we're all about. And so for us to start doing that, is us as individuals to kick this year off, let's have that DTR. Who is Jesus? What's he all about in our lives? And let's see what it looks like to be a follower, not a fan. Each week as a church, what we do to kind of recognize this and who Jesus is and what he's all about, and really challenge us to, hey, I'm following Jesus, is we have communion together. And communion is a lot of churches practices, the way we do it each week as a church. And we do it to remember Jesus' death and resurrection for us. We remember what he came to do, and that's to rescue, redeem us, and offer us life if we have faith in him and we follow him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray, and we're going to worship with song this next time together, and after that we're going to take communion together. What we do is we take communion together as one church, as one kind of unified group of people. And there's prepackaged communion things, because that's kind of how we do it as a portable church like we are. And the top layer has like the bread, the little cracker wafer type thing. Underneath that layer is the juice, that's the blood of Jesus. And so this is what Jesus meant. If you want to be a part of it, you have to eat my flesh, drink my blood. And this isn't flesh and blood, this is wafer and juice, but it represents who Jesus is and what he came to do. Let's lay down his life for you and me so that you and I could have life. And for that, this is why we follow him. That's what we're all about. And so we're going to do that. If you have questions or wondering what it looks like to really follow Jesus, you want to talk to me or one of our team members afterwards, stop us at the information table. We'd love to talk to you more there. But for now, let's pray and let's worship together before we take communion. God, thank you so much for this morning, this new year and everything that's happening, God. And it's good and bad and ugly already 5 days in. But God, we're here to remind ourselves of why we gather as a church, and that's for you. God, you're not looking for us to be just admirers of you or just fans of you. You're looking for us to be followers. Because that's where life is changed and transformed, and this is what you came to do. And so, God, where are we at with you? So we need to ask ourselves, why are we here? Are we all in, and have we made this thing our own? And God, I pray that every single one of us in this room, no matter where we're at in our faith with you, we start wrestling with those questions. God, maybe we start saying yes to the idea of following you, what that looks like for our lives moving forward. So God, we thank you for loving us and giving your life for us through the cross. And that's your we pray.